Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, we return to the Blue Ridge, where voices carry through the pines, trails shift underfoot, and not everyone finds their way back. These 8 stories come from those who wandered too far, hikers who lost their bearings, campers who heard footsteps circle the tent, surveyors, researchers, loners, each with a reason to be out there, each with something they can't forget. These aren't stories told around the fire. They're what comes after the fire dies. If you're drawn to what waits off trail, consider subscribing. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're listening from. Now, let the night settle in and listen closely. I wasn't supposed to be that far south. My plan had been simple. Drive Skyline Drive until the sky dimmed, then turn back before frost got heavy. But the grief doesn't really follow maps. And neither do I, lately. My name is Elise Rhodes. I'm 33. Used to be a paramedic up in Winchester. Now on a winter break from a wildlife rehab course I started last fall in Roanoke. After my brother Josh died last January. Snowmobile accident. Freak ice collapse. I started recording voice notes during long solo drives. Not for a podcast or anything, just to speak into the quiet. That afternoon, I'd been tracing the last southern leg of Skyline when I noticed a road that didn't look familiar. No name marker, just a narrow cut into the trees. Tire tracks faint under weeks of snow, but recently disturbed. It wasn't listed on the parkway map I kept clipped to the dash. Out of impulse more than anything else, I turned the wheel and followed it. The climb started gradual, then steepened unnaturally fast. Switchback so tight I had to edge the wheel inch by inch. I remember thinking no county plow would have come this far. Yet the path looked recently cleared, not professionally, just enough. Maybe by someone with a personal reason to keep it open. My heater started losing its battle with the cold just past the third bend, and I saw a shoulder wide enough for one vehicle. I eased in, shifted into park, and left the engine running. Took out my phone, half expecting a few bars of signal, but no luck. Just the frozen symbol of a tower with a slash through it. I cracked the door, letting in a bite of wind that stung my cheeks. That's when I saw them. Footprints. They were right beside the passenger side, heading into the woods. Single file, one set only. The snow around them was crisp, undisturbed otherwise, but no return trail, no second path, like someone had walked in and never come back. I stared at them longer than I should have, expecting to see a shape emerge from the trees, or maybe a shout, a hiker lost, someone needing help. But the trees stayed still. 10 minutes passed. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows like fingers pointing downslope. Then the engine stuttered. Once, twice, then went quiet. I had gas. My battery was only a month old. I tried the key again. Nothing. Not even a click. I've seen engines freeze. Sure, but this wasn't the right temperature for that, and the heater had still been warm. Something just cut out. My truck had a CB, so I reached for the mic and keyed it. Static. No channel response. Dead air all the way across. I should have waited. Should have stayed put. But the quiet out there didn't feel like any quiet I'd ever known. It felt hollow. Like the woods were listening. So I zipped my coat, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The snow gave just slightly under my boots as I followed the prints. They were oddly spaced, not far apart, but off somehow, like the person had been turning as they walked, maybe looking behind them, maybe stumbling. About 20 minutes in, the trail curved along a ridge that overlooked a shallow drop into a ravine. That's where I started to notice something stranger. The trees ahead were older, taller, but not thick enough to block a vehicle. I hadn't seen a trail sign yet, not even a mile marker, only that same odd pattern of prints, winding ahead. Then I found the clearing. It opened abruptly, maybe the size of a tennis court, and right at its center was a splintered wooden post with a trail sign snapped in half. Only the bottom remained, as echo, barely legible beneath the frost. I scanned the area, heart thumping now. No cabins, no benches, no camera poles. Then I heard it. Something behind me, crunching softly. Snow displaced. I spun. Nothing. But when I turned back toward my own path, the trail I'd just walked, I froze. There were two sets of prints now. Mine, and another, matching every step. I didn't move at first. Just stared at the snow like it might rearrange itself. Explain something. But the facts were plain and clean, etched in white. One set of prints had become two, mine still leading forward, and another beside them, perfectly aligned, as if whatever made them had mirrored me step for step, just far enough behind that I never heard. Then I ran, back down the way I came, flashlight jerking in my hand, breath too loud in the silence. The woods didn't echo, not properly. The snow deadened everything. At first, I thought I could just retrace, follow my own steps like breadcrumbs. But the prints were wrong again. At every turn, the path forked into two sets, then three. Some of the newer ones veered sharply off trail, circled trees, looped, as if someone had been weaving through the woods alongside me the whole time. Panic thinned out my reasoning. My legs started to cramp. I kept catching my coat on low branches, boots slipping where snow had iced beneath. I shouted once, just to hear myself, but the sound didn't carry. It barely even came back to me. No birds, no rustling, just the crunch of my own steps, or what I still hoped were just mine. Then I saw the shack. It sat a few dozen yards off the trail, or what had once been a trail, barely visible through frost-draped branches. One-room structure, half sunken into the slope, with boarded windows and a rusted tin roof bowing under snow. The front door hung open an inch. I rushed inside. It was dry, barely, dust and rodent droppings in the corners, but there was a cot with broken slats, a dead fireplace, and shelves lined with half-empty tins. One thing on the wall caught my eye, a red emergency case with a flare gun still clipped inside. I took it, loaded, one shot. I shut the door, wedged a splintered chair under the knob, and sat by the window, waited. At first, I kept checking the woods, flashlight off, trying to let my eyes adjust. Snow kept falling, soft and slow, coating the ground again, erasing evidence. I waited like that for maybe 2 hours, maybe 3. No footsteps, no sounds, just the dull weight of exhaustion settling into my chest like sleep trying to sneak in. I started convincing myself it had been a trick of the light. I'd been tired, stressed. Maybe I'd stepped weird and doubled over my own prints. It happens. Grief scrambles you in ways you can't track until later. By the time I allowed my eyes to drift shut, it was fully night. The wind had picked up, making the rafters creak. But inside, it was still, until the glass cracked. Not shattered. Not yet. Just flexed, like something had pressed hard from the outside. I bolted upright, heart slamming. The back window, smaller than the others, groaned again. I heard a breath, a hand, maybe. The chair at the door rattled. I lunged, grabbing the flare gun, ran to the back, and fired. For a split second, the world lit up in red. And there it was, right outside the window. A face, not just pale, but wrong. No color, no eyebrows. Skin pulled flat as if pressed hard against the pane. Eyes open too wide. Mouth just a line. The flare flash caught the fog of its breath. Then darkness again. Something slammed into the front door from outside. I didn't wait. I shoved the chair aside, flung the door open, and ran. Into the woods. Not toward the car. Just away. Anywhere. So long as the thing behind the glass wasn't near. Branches scraped my face. Snow stung my eyes. My breath came in ragged, tearing gulps. But I didn't stop. Because I knew, if I had stayed even 1 second longer, that window would have given in. They found me at dawn, 3 miles downslope, curled in a thicket half frozen, clutching the flare gun like a lifeline. A volunteer with the search team said I was lucky to have found shelter. I didn't correct him. They never found the shack. And my car. Never recovered. No record of it anywhere in the ranger logs. The road I swore I'd taken doesn't show on any official map. But I went online later. Satellite view. Scanned that whole region pixel by pixel. Eventually, I found it. A pale white ribbon of trail, winding up a ridge to a clearing marked faintly as Old Switchback Lookout. Decommissioned 1974. I zoomed in, and in the middle of the snow-covered clearing, there was a single black dot. Small, human-shaped. Watching my car, I didn't grow up thinking I'd walk forests for a living, but there's something about measuring what's supposed to stay put that calms me. I'm Danielle Keene, 30 years old. 2 months into my first season as a boundary technician with the NPS. It's quiet work. Mostly. I hike. I flag. Make sure property lines aren't shifting. Trails aren't creeping off their paths. And unofficial campsites haven't popped up where they shouldn't. You'd be amazed how fast the woods can eat signage. That morning, I parked at the South Access lot just off the Virginia-North Carolina border. The fog hadn't fully lifted yet. A thin, damp veil still clung to the valleys. But sunlight was starting to scatter through it, just enough to catch on the edges of leaves and wildflowers. Spring had finally broken through. The dogwoods were budding. I'd brought lunch, an extra battery pack, and my GPS marker tool. North Trail, mile 22, was my assignment. A ridgeline segment flagged for rerouting after a minor landslide last fall. It was my third solo outing, which meant I'd finally passed enough checks to go without supervision. Still, I had protocols. Check in at trailhead, keep the radio on, ping base if anything looked unusual, which is why, when I reached the metal boundary post about a mile in, something immediately put me on edge. There was a second line. Not ours. Not official yellow flagging like we used for boundary shifts or trail realignment. This was red tape, brittle, sun-faded, tied clumsily at ankle height in a way that didn't match any standard survey layout. It curved off from the marker, veering left into thicker brush. No blaze marks. No GPS pings along the line. I radioed it in, toggled through 3 frequencies. Nothing but static. I waited, listening. Wind stirred the branches, sent loose leaves skating across the trail. Then silence again. So I followed it. Just a short distance. I told myself. Quarter mile. Max. Enough to see if it led to a property encroachment or backcountry project no one logged. But the deeper I went, the older the tape looked. Cracked where sun and rain had baked it brittle. Some strips barely clinging to the branches. Whoever said it had done so months ago, maybe longer. Yet the trail still felt recent, not walked, but watched, like the air had a memory of motion. A little past the quarter-mile mark, I hit a clearing, not wide, maybe 30 feet across. What stood out wasn't the space itself, but what had been mounted to a tree on the far side. A steel box, rectangular, weather-worn, bolted at shoulder height with faded paint around the edges. Definitely government issue, but not from our current kit. Could have been forestry, could have been meteorological, but I checked my infrastructure app anyway. No record of it, not on the park maps, not on any historic overlays I had loaded. The lock had been snapped, clean break, as if someone had used a bolt cutter not long ago. No rust on the wound. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were loose sheets, not laminated or clipped. No official stamps, just pencil on paper. Page after page of hand-drawn maps, not topographical, more like field sketches. Only wrong. Circles where there should have been elevations. Overlapping loops. Grid marks that didn't match GPS scales. The kind of drawing someone does when they're trying to chart movement, not land. I turned to leave. My boot crunched louder than it should have. And hanging there, maybe 6 feet behind me, just to the left of where I'd entered, was a fresh strip of red tape. It hadn't been there before. Not faded. Not curled from weather. Fresh. Cut clean. Someone else was in the woods. I didn't run. Not yet. I packed the map pages quickly, folded tight and tucked under my vest. Marked a GPS point just in case. My fingers were shaking, but I got the waypoint set. Then I turned back the way I'd come. Except something was off. The light had shifted. More filtered. Less direct. I couldn't see the main trail through the trees like I had before. I started walking anyway, fast and steady, tracking the red tape in reverse. After 10 minutes, I passed a twisted cedar stump with its base burned black. I knew that stump. I'd already walked past it on my way in. I picked up speed. 5 minutes later, same stump, same lean, same curl of bark, like the woods were rerouting around me. I stopped, breathing hard, trying not to let the panic catch up. I pulled my GPS unit. Screen blinked, froze, then reset. No location. Just a gray box with the words, "Acquiring satellite." I tried radio again. Nothing. Not even static now. Just silence. That's when I realized the tape was starting to double back on itself. I saw two markers tied to trees less than a foot apart. One faded. One sharp. It wasn't a return path. It was a trap. I veered off trail. Didn't care about protocol anymore. I headed toward lower ground, looking for any sign of human structure. A road. A shelter. Even old fencing. Anything not trees. I found it after what felt like an hour. An old wooden shed, sunken at the back, like it had been there 100 years. Roof sloped under moss and rot. It blended so well with the earth. I nearly missed it. The door hung slightly ajar. I ducked inside, heart hammering. Dust choked the air. No light, except for the slit through the warped door. I shut it, pressed the broken latch into place, and slid down the wall. It wasn't secure, but it was a barrier. For now. No footsteps followed. No movement outside. Just the sound of wind again. Too light for how hard my chest was rising. I turned on my flashlight. The shed was nearly empty. Shelves along 3 walls. Rotted through, in places. Nothing stored. All except one shelf in the back. On it sat a second steel box. I stepped closer. Slowly. Light trembling as I moved. This one was already open. Inside were more map pages. Neatly stacked. Pencil lines fresher. No water damage. On the top sheet, a sketch. Not terrain. Not elevation. A drawing of this shed, viewed from the outside. And in front of the door stood a figure. No detail. Just a shape in heavy graphite. Head tilted. Watching. My blood went cold. I turned and reached for the latch. Tried to open the door. It didn't budge. I pulled harder. Nothing. Then I heard it. The slow rasp of breath just outside. No footsteps. No talking. Just someone there. Not moving. I dropped to the floor. Pressed my eye to the slats near the bottom. A face stared back. Inches away. No light. No expression. Just pale skin and eyes that didn't blink. I flinched back too fast. My boot landed on a board near the far wall, and it gave a sharp, dry creak. Loud. The breathing outside paused. I didn't move again. I backed deeper into the dark, forcing myself into the corner, careful not to touch anything that might groan or break. I stayed that way until the light faded, and even after that, I stayed longer. Because I knew, if I hadn't stepped aside just then, the sound would have been louder, and that face might have pushed in. I didn't expect anything weird. The job was routine. Low-pay freelance work for a company trying to digitize and verify trail systems across Appalachia. I'm Marcus Teller, 24, fresh out of environmental studies, still figuring out what I'm actually doing with my life. The project leads would email a scanned topographic sheet, drop a rough GPS pin, and say, "Go make sure this trail still exists." It usually didn't. Fire damage, storm washouts, hikers cutting shortcuts. Half the time, what looked clear on paper had already been swallowed by briars and deadfall. That afternoon, I was sent to verify a segment labeled Split Rock Sector. Not on all trails. Not even on local blogs. I had to cross-reference it with old state forestry records just to figure out where to park. There wasn't much to go on. Just a line that curved up to a bluff labeled Split Rock View, and a handwritten note. Eroded switchbacks. Stay upslope. It was already pushing 4 when I hit the trailhead, or what used to be one. Just 2 rotting posts. No signage. No blazes. Sunlight was already cutting low through the trees, bleeding orange where it hit the ridgelines. I moved fast, hoping to reach the bluff before full dark. The air had that stillness late summer gets. Humid but brittle, like the trees are tired of pretending it's still warm. Crickets had started up early, but it wasn't enough to cover the crunch of my boots. The trail was barely a game path. Ferns had taken over, and I kept snagging on low brambles. After 40 minutes of slow climbing, I crested a rise and saw the bluff ahead. 2 massive stone slabs pressed together with a narrow gap between them. Split rock. I stepped up between them, just enough to see the view, ridge after ridge. Mist gathering in the hollows below, and that's when I saw it. Stuffed into a crevice between the stones, bent and sun-bleached, was a Polaroid photo. I thought maybe someone had wedged it there as a joke or a trail marker. It was curled with age. The colors slightly warped, but not ruined. A girl stood in the frame, late teens maybe, in a thin summer dress. She was standing right where I was now, in front of the split rock, facing the camera, but her arm was raised, not waving, pointing at something or someone, just behind the photographer. I turned around instinctively. Nothing there, just woods, no wind, no voices, no footfall. I told myself it was probably someone's art project, a staged shot, part of a scavenger hunt maybe. But the longer I looked at her face, the less it felt like a pose. Her expression wasn't playful, it was tight, like she'd just noticed something she wasn't supposed to see. I tucked the photo into the back of my journal, marked the GPS location, and started back. I moved quicker than before, not running, just enough to hear my breath more than the woods. Then I saw it. A second photo, lying right in the middle of the trail, like someone had placed it there deliberately. I bent down, part suddenly offbeat. Same girl, same clearing. But this time, she wasn't facing the camera. She was looking up toward the rocks, mouth slightly open, not afraid, just bracing, like she'd realized something was coming. I scanned the trail ahead, checked behind me. Still no one, no movement, no snapped branches, and no footprints. I hadn't passed anyone on the way in, and the trail was too narrow for anyone to have slipped by without brushing the ferns. Still, I felt watched now, that prickle behind the ears, the way the air shifts when you're not alone. I kept walking. By the time I reached the lot again, the sun had dipped. My car was parked under a slope of trees, and something was off. The driver's side door was open. Not wide, just enough, like someone had nudged it out of habit or hadn't closed it all the way. I stopped cold, my pulse loud in my neck. No other vehicles, no sign of another person. I approached slowly, ready to drop my pack if I needed to bolt. Then I saw the third photo. It was sitting dead center on the driver's seat. This one wasn't old. It showed me, standing at the trailhead, in the same clothes I was wearing now. Expression blank, confused. I looked up, and for just a split second, maybe less, I saw someone duck behind the tree line at the edge of the lot. Too fast to see a face, but not fast enough to unsee the shape. I didn't call out, didn't chase, just grabbed my bag, slammed the door, and reversed so fast the tires kicked gravel. I made it down the old logging road in under 10 minutes. Headlights jerking over potholes, tree limbs smacking the windshield. At the first paved intersection I found, I turned toward Linville proper and didn't stop until I saw the glow of a ranger station through the dusk. Inside, the lights felt too bright, sterile. I dumped the photos on the desk and asked if there was a known artist doing installations at Split Rock. The two rangers looked at each other. Then one went into the back room. The older one stayed, squinting at the topographic print I showed him. "You said Split Rock Trail?" he asked. "That trail was decommissioned 20 years ago. They selfed in many wake." "Why?" I asked. He hesitated. "Too many disappearances. In there's opposites a handdays to a menton barty." I didn't ask anything else. I thanked them, took back the photos, and left. Booked a roadside motel just off the main strip. One of those single-floor places with a vending machine bolted to the wall and a TV that barely got reception. I double-locked the door, left the bathroom light on, didn't open my journal, didn't look at the photos again. I told myself it was a prank. Someone with access to a telephoto lens and a Polaroid. Maybe even one of the surveyors trying to haze the new guy. It had to be explainable, rational, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the girl's expression, especially in the second photo, wasn't posed. That wide-eyed look, not of fear, but of knowing, like she'd seen something coming. I showered, tried to sleep. The fan in the wall unit ticked unevenly, like it was hitting something behind the grate. I closed my eyes, tried to ignore the fact that I'd never actually heard the shutter click for the photo of me. The knock came just after midnight. Not loud, just enough to wake me. I sat up. The fan was still ticking. Nothing else moved. I got up slowly, walked to the window, and lifted the edge of the curtain. No one there. But on the sill sat another Polaroid, fresh, corners clean, still smelling faintly of developer. The girl again, but now she was pointing, not into the woods, not behind the camera, at the window. And behind her, in the blurry, unfocused background, I recognized something I shouldn't have. The exact pattern of wallpaper from the motel room I was in. Same curtains, same table lamp, same view. I didn't think, just grabbed my bag and went out the back exit, barefoot, clothes still damp from the shower. Behind the motel, a narrow service road curved into the woods. I took it, then cut left as soon as I saw a break in the tree line. Didn't stop to check my footing, didn't look back. Branches tore at my arms. Roots caught at my heels. I crossed a ditch too wide and fell. Palms scraping rock. Mud sliding up my knees. Behind me, just barely, I heard someone moving, not running. Following, the deliberate crash of footfall in brush. Steady, never speeding up. No voice, no breath, just the movement. Always the same distance behind. I ran harder. Every time I stopped to listen, I heard it again. A pause, then a step, then silence. And sometimes, barely audible over my own heartbeat. The soft click of a shutter. I don't know how long I ran. At some point, the sound stopped, and I didn't dare stop with them. Eventually, I stumbled onto a rural road, sat under a dead billboard until dawn. I never went back for the car. I took a bus out of state the next day, left everything behind, but I still check trail archives when I can't sleep. Back forums, map uploads, old ranger logs. A few weeks ago, someone posted a thread titled, "Do you know the girl at Split Rock?" They were sender. There was a thumbnail attached. I clicked. It was her again. Same dress, same stare. But the photo had changed. This time, she wasn't pointing into the woods. She was pointing at me. Most nights I stayed up too late anyway. It's a bad habit I picked up after Lauren died. Insomnia, disguised as productivity. I'm Jared Metz, 41. Part-time IT contractor with full-time grief and too many quiet hours. After she passed, I moved out here to her grandfather's old house near the North Carolina foothills. Cheap land, 1 bar of cell service on a good day, and silence thick enough to feel physical. I do remote network diagnostics and low-level security installs for clients in D.C. The irony's not lost on me. That morning, or I guess still night, was colder than usual. Late November had iced the windows, and I'd just finished rewiring the attic router after days of intermittent dropouts. The crawl space up there is barely tall enough to crouch, and I'd spent 2 hours rerouting coax lines and swapping in a backup modem I'd flashed myself. By the time I was back downstairs, the air was still damp from frost melting off the attic joists. I sat on the couch with coffee that had gone cold, watching my diagnostic app map the signal strength across the house. Then a ping. New device connected. Unknown MAC address. Even in shells. I blinked. Thought maybe I'd left the old laptop running. But no. Only my phone and one work laptop were live on the network. That was it. The new device had no name listed. No manufacturer metadata. Just a MAC address I didn't recognize and a local IP logged 3 seconds earlier. I tapped through to the network history. A single file had been uploaded to my shared folder. No name. No extension. Just a timestamp. 4:13 a.m. My thumb hesitated over the screen. Then I opened it. It was a video. 10 seconds long. Grainy. Low light. It showed me, asleep on the couch, from outside the living room window. I stood so fast I nearly spilled the coffee. Went straight to the window. Flipped the lock. Checked the latch. Still shut. Still frosted on the outside. No signs of smudging. I checked the other windows. All locked. I unplugged the router. Shut down the laptop. Cut the power to the attic modem entirely. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. Then, at 4:29 a.m., another file appeared. This one had audio, just faint wind and the low hum of the TV. The camera angle was slightly different now, closer to the glass. My face clearer, eyes closed. You could see the reflection of the TV flickering off the window, lighting the faint outline of my blanket. No sign of anyone in the room, no movement, but the file hadn't come from the internet. My system was offline. I did a full sweep. All doors, all windows. Checked the attic again. Nothing but coaxial dust and mouse scat. I hadn't used the upstairs bedrooms since moving in. Left them empty, untouched. I shut the breaker to the entire house. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, full manual lockdown. But just before 5 a.m., the third file appeared. No device triggered it. No timestamp this time. It was a still frame, not a video. Just a shot of the window from inches away, closer than the others. And in the glass reflection, someone was behind me, smiling. I didn't sleep, didn't sit down. I grabbed my old field toolkit and started gutting every piece of tech in the house. The modem came out first, then the router, then every Ethernet cable I'd run through the walls when I moved in. I pulled the fuse on the smart panel I'd installed last spring. After that, I yanked power cords from every outlet until the only thing still humming was the fridge. Then the TV turned on. It was the kind I'd never fully trusted. One of those models that listens for voice commands, but always seems to know too much. It buzzed with static, then flicked to a black screen. And there I was again, not in real time, but almost. The living room, couch and frame. My face slightly turned, breathing slow, but I wasn't recording. Nothing in the room should have been able to capture or stream video. I'd pulled every active signal out by hand. I scanned the room. No lens, no red light, just that silent feed playing on loop. When I tried to shut it off, the remote didn't work. The buttons didn't respond. So I left, grabbed my jacket, keys, and wallet, got in the truck and drove until frost started melting from the windshield. Ended up at a 24-hour diner in town, one of the few places that still smelled like old grease and not antiseptic. I sat at the counter, ordered coffee I didn't want, and kept looking at the door. The cook glanced over, eventually. Big guy with burn scars on both arms and a Bluetooth speaker playing country low behind the grill. "You all right?" he asked, not unkindly. "Yeah," I said. "Just a power glitch at home." He nodded once, then paused. "You sure? I thought you had someone staying with you." "Came some." I didn't answer, just looked out the window into the dark, where the mountain fog was starting to lift. I stayed there until morning. Traffic started to roll in, mostly contractors and delivery vans. Then I paid and drove back. When I got home, everything was still powered down. I left it that way. Instead, I put on my old GoPro, the kind I use for trail hikes, and started recording everything. Hallways, corners, under furniture. I mounted a mirror across from the living room window, angled so I could see it from the kitchen table. Then I waited. Around 4 a.m., the TV came alive again without power. No flicker this time, just straight to the feed. Me, on the couch, same as before. But now, the mirror was in frame. I leaned in close, watched the screen while the recording looped again. Then I saw it. Not in the room. In the reflection, just behind the glass, outlined faintly in the mirrored shot, was a figure, standing inches from the window, perfectly still. No light caught it directly, but in the glass, it was unmistakable. Shoulders hunched, face close, smiling. I rewound the GoPro footage, paused, zoomed. The figure didn't show up in the raw video, only in the TV's broadcast, only through the mirror. I pulled the file onto a thumb drive. I transferred it to my laptop carefully, on battery only. Opened the metadata. There, buried deep in the image EXIF data, was a GPS tag. Latitude, longitude. It pointed to my attic. I didn't go back up. Instead, I sealed the hatch, duct taped the seams, blocked the crawlspace vent with an aluminum plate and 3 layers of signal dampening mesh. Then I sold the house before December hit. Took the first decent offer. No negotiation. I live in a condo now. No smart systems. No connected anything. But I kept the mirror, locked in storage, wrapped in blackout cloth. And still, some nights, I check my phone out of habit. Sometimes, there's a file, just 1 second long. And in the reflection behind me, someone is smiling again. Most nights out there felt like held breath. That kind of stretched, static silence that never quite breaks, even with wind moving through the trees. I'm Hannah Rayburn, 26, doing third shift field work with a wildlife survey group tied to a regional conservation program. We logged nocturnal activity, movement sensors, trail cams, scat markings. Blue tag projects like this usually ran low budget and even lower staff, which meant most of us rotated solo. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet more than I should have. That night was mid-spring but felt more like late winter. Early May in the Craggies can still carry a bite if the wind turns. I'd left the group cabin just before midnight, parked at a pull-off off the parkway, and followed a narrow brush-lined path up toward the ridge. Camera 19 was one of the newer placements. Rigged, 2 weeks earlier along a game trail we'd flagged for fox dens. Trees were heavy with bud growth, canopy thick enough to mute even moonlight. You don't realize how much darker mountain woods get until you're up in them past midnight. No high beams, no phone signal, just your own breathing and the creak of old trunks around you. I found camera 19 without trouble. The mounting post was still upright, no sign of weather damage. But as I stepped closer and leaned in to unscrew the casing, I noticed something that hadn't been there on install. A black mark, stamped directly on the lens housing, a perfect circle, about 2 inches wide, thick, like someone had pressed an ink seal straight onto the casing. Not one of ours. Definitely not survey standard. I reached out, thinking maybe it was tree sap or dust, but when I touched it, it left a smear on my fingertips, like fresh ink, still damp. I wiped my hand on my pant leg and popped the SD card. Normally we'd just tag, bag, and swap, but I'd brought my tablet this round, thinking I could run diagnostics in real time. I slotted the card in and flicked through the frames. Mostly normal. A few blur-triggered shots of branches moving, one clear frame of a raccoon around 140. Then something else. A man, crouched low in front of the lens, hands covering his face. Not blurry, not distant, close. I checked the timestamp. 2:13 a.m. I glanced at my watch. 2:12 a.m. Every hair on my arms went up. I turned around in a full circle. Just trees. No sounds. Nothing moving. But I kept my back to a trunk after that, thumb hovering over the emergency ping on my radio. I skipped to the next image. Blank. Just blackness. Then another. Me. Standing at the camera. Same confused tilt of the head I must have made just seconds earlier. The moment I realized it was me, I stumbled back. The tablet nearly slipped from my hands. I blinked hard, checked again. It was the same jacket, same braid over my shoulder, same expression I'd just made, caught at an angle I couldn't have seen. Then the screen froze. Static bars. Feed corruption. The image fragmented. But right before the display gave out, one last frame blinked through. My face again, but over it now, stamped directly across my forehead, was that same black circle. Clear, crisp, marked. I backed away so fast I hit my shoulder on a low branch. The tablet clattered into the dirt but didn't break. I left the card in it, shoved the whole thing in my pack, and started moving. Fast. Not a full run. Just the kind of walk that makes your legs ache because you're holding everything back, including your breath. The path back to the service road felt longer this time. Every twist of shadow looked wrong. Every sound had a weight to it. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to catch movement. A figure. Anything, but there was never anything there. That almost made it worse. I reached the car, got in, locked the doors, started the engine. It turned over, but the headlights flickered. Dashboard lights blinked once, then dimmed, like the battery was failing, though I'd checked it last week. Still, it held just enough juice to crawl down the ridge and reach the emergency shed about 2 miles away. I killed the engine, grabbed my gear, locked myself inside the shed. It wasn't much. Just an old ranger outpost with a cot, emergency food packs, a wall radio that hadn't worked in years. But the lock was solid. I sat on the cot, unzipped the pack, reached for the towel I kept wrapped around the tablet. That's when I saw it. The black ink was still on my fingertips. I scrubbed it with the towel, then with water, then with alcohol wipes from the kit. Nothing. It didn't smear, didn't fade. It was like it had soaked in. I wrapped my hand in gauze and tried not to think. Wrapped myself in a mylar blanket, curled up with my knees to my chest, stared at the door. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember was the overhead light buzzing, faint at first, then dimming. The clock on my pack read 3:27 a.m. No footsteps, no knocks, just that buzz, like the electricity was barely hanging on. I pulled the tablet back out, still dead screen, but when I touched the home button, it flickered, then loaded a new image. No file name, no timestamp. It was a photo taken from above. The angle was skewed, like from the ceiling rafters. It showed me in the shed, curled under the blanket. I stared at it, heart pounding, mouth dry, no sound, no explanation. Then something slammed into the door. I jumped, knocking the tablet to the ground again. It kept going. A second hit. Harder. The door creaked but held. I lunged toward the cot, flipped it onto its side, braced it against the door frame. One of the legs jammed into the floor groove, locking just enough to slow whatever was pushing in. The next hit cracked the wood an inch. Then a hand slid through. Ink-streaked, pale. The fingertips brushing the inside wall like they were feeling for something. For me, I reached for the emergency kit under the cot, yanked the flare gun from its mount, fired straight through the gap. A shriek, high, animal-like. Then the hand vanished. I kicked the cot back into place and pressed my weight against it, part pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I didn't move until daylight painted the frost silver. When the team found me later that morning, I told them someone had tampered with camera 19. That's it. The shed was intact. No prints. No camera in the rafters. They chalked it up to a blown transformer surge and stress. But the SD card, gone. Weeks later, a package showed up at my apartment. No return address. No tracking number. Inside was a new sensor box, identical to the ones we use. But this one wasn't on the field log. and inside was a single photo. Me, asleep in bed. A fresh timestamp. Next week. And across my forehead, stamped in black ink, the same perfect circle. Some people run marathons or take up woodworking to stay sane. I walk. Long stretches. Remote trail grids. The older and less kept, the better. My name's Oliver Maddox, 38. A former military medic who left the structure behind years ago. Though the nightmares stayed. Hiking these sections helps. Feet moving, eyes forward. You can't spiral too deep if you're busy staying upright. This leg had taken me near Cobb Hollow, an old spur trail barely listed on any current maps. I'd found it mentioned in a 2009 hiking blog. One post. No comments. No follow-ups. The sign marking it had been scratched out. Deep grooves cutting through the letters like someone had taken a hunting knife to it. That just made it feel more interesting. Like maybe it had been forgotten. Not closed. Late July. Thick air. Loud bugs. Sweat sticking my shirt to my back before I even set up camp. I reached the ridgeline around 6:30. Pitched just below the crest, in a slight dip that offered some wind. The sun dropped low, turning everything gold. I cooked on a flat stone just past my tent. Dehydrated rice and lentils. Nothing fancy. And watched the light catch the tree edges like they'd been painted. That's when I heard it. A woman's voice. Humming. No lyrics. Just a looping melody. Soft. Almost fragile. Drifting from uphill. I paused. Spoon halfway to my mouth. It didn't sound like singing. Exactly. More like remembering. Like someone humming to themselves while doing a task. But it never paused. Never breathed. Just kept going. I stood. Scanned the slope above my camp. Nothing. No movement. I called out. A casual, "Hey there," like I'd stumbled across another hiker. The humming stopped. I waited a minute. Maybe two. Silence. Just the cicadas now. Then I sat down, finished my food, tried to brush it off. But 20 minutes later, just as dusk turned the sky lavender, the humming came back. This time, it came from behind the tent. Same melody, same rhythm. I got up slow, grabbed my headlamp, swung the beam in a wide arc. Nothing behind the tent. No shapes. No sounds of movement. Just that tune, threading through the trees. I spoke again. Louder this time. It stopped. I grabbed my gear. Didn't even bother rolling the tent, just stuffed it, lopsided, into the pack. My compass was out, needle jittering like it couldn't decide where north lived. My phone had no service. Not even a flash of signal. I didn't have a destination in mind. Just a direction. Downhill. I moved fast, tripping on roots, brushing through undergrowth. Half trusting instinct. The light kept dropping. That last gold glow vanished. Everything was shadows. After maybe 40 minutes of downhill scramble, I stumbled into a clearing. A ravine cut had leveled it out. That's when I saw it. A second campsite. Fire ring still warm. Ash glowing faintly. A dome-style tent zipped tight, perfectly centered on a blue tarp. I slowed. Called out. No reply. I circled once. Cautious. No sign of another pack. No food strung up. Just the tent. Sealed. I stepped closer. Knocked once on the nylon. No answer. Then the humming started again. From inside the tent, same voice. Same exact tune. I stepped back. Not fast. Not running. But I didn't stay. I turned and walked. Not a sprint. Not yet. Just a steady, locked-in pace. Eyes scanning for the trail that should have been on the opposite slope. But the woods here were tangled. Overgrown in a way that didn't match the maps or my memory. I tried climbing out of the ravine in the same direction I'd entered. But everything shifted. Footpaths that ended in brambles. Clearings that didn't open where they should have. The humming started again. I froze. It wasn't behind me this time. It was off to my left. And then, half a breath later, the same tune came again, mirrored perfectly from the right. Two voices. Same pitch, same cadence, looping that melody like some kind of call and response where no one had started the song. I kept moving, uphill this time. Any direction that felt away. I found an old trail marker, rusted and twisted so the arrows pointed in crooked opposition. One bent toward a dead tree, the other into a thicket. Neither felt right. The air got cooler as I climbed, not the usual breeze kind of cool, but an absence, a drop that made the sweat on my arms go suddenly cold. Then I saw it, the ranger station, half buried under brush, almost completely swallowed. The porch had collapsed, but the door was intact, and underneath the front step was a small crawlspace hatch, hanging open. I didn't think. I dropped inside, twisted onto my side, pulled the hatch shut behind me, flicked on my headlamp. The space was tight, just high enough to crouch. Old boards above, dirt floor below, shelves held rusted tools, coiled wire, cans that had long since gone to rot. Finally, silence. I crouched in the far corner, headlamp dimmed, mylar blanket pulled tight. I stayed still, just listening. For a long while, there was nothing but my own pulse. Then a creak above me, one floorboard, then another, soft, deliberate. I killed the lamp, held my breath. A sliver of light cut through a crack above. A thin, perfect line, like someone was sweeping a flashlight across the floor, slow and searching. Then the humming started again, but now it was right above me, just inches of wood between us. A pause, then footsteps, slow and steady, crossing the room, then silence, until a creak, directly above my head. Then, a shadow knelt. I could see the outline through the slats. Not a body, exactly, but the shape of one. A hand reached down into the crawl space. Not fast, not clawing, just hanging there, palm open, fingers splayed like it was waiting for something. I didn't move, didn't breathe, every muscle locked. Then the fingers twitched. Once, a little beckon, and the humming started again. Right beside me now, inside the crawl space. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up at dawn, curled in gravel beside a ranger road, barefoot, throat dry like I'd been screaming. My pack was gone, my tent, my tablet, no signs of a break-in at the station. They told me later. No second campsite ever logged. I told the ranger it was heat stress, maybe a panic attack. He nodded like he didn't believe me, but didn't want to ask. A week later, I found a folded local pamphlet at a roadside diner while waiting for my breakfast to cool. Just a black and white trifold with bold type near the back. Cobb Hollow, once a settler pass, now closed. Old folks used to say the place could sing back to you, but not in your own voice. There's a rhythm to old parcels, a kind of muscle memory. You learn to spot the corners by intuition before the marker tape ever shows up. I'm Clay Renshaw, 44, contract surveyor for private development claims. I don't do crowd work. I specialize in the forgotten plots, overgrown boundaries, family lands no one's touched in 40 years, properties that exist more on paper than on earth. The kind of jobs that require a truck with good clearance and a tolerance for thorn brush. That morning, I was walking a boundary parcel near the Tennessee border, a narrow stretch of high ridge tagged for logging access. No current residents, just poplar and scrub maple, leaves mostly down, ground, soft, with wet mulch. The air had that late autumn sharpness, where it's still light out but feels like dusk. I'd already hit 3 corners of the perimeter by noon, brass pins sunk in rock or flagged trees where the original lines had gone soft. Routine stuff. I took notes, logged paces. Then I reached a stretch where the flagging just stopped. Not at a corner, not at a bluff, just ended midline. No evidence of storm damage. The pink plastic tape had been cut clean. No fray, no sun fade. I scanned the area, expecting an old rebar pin, but what I found instead was a wooden stake, hand-carved, dark gray, maybe 2 feet tall and driven deep into the loam. The top was strange, notched, almost like a compass point, and the head of the stake had been capped with a hard crust of dried clay, smoothed flat. Next to it, the soil had been disturbed, fresh-turned dirt, circular pattern, as if something had been dug out or buried. I took a step back and marked the GPS coordinates, just in case. My gut started turning, not with fear. Exactly, just unease. The way you feel when someone stands too close at the post office. I moved on, tracing the last leg of the line toward my truck. But 10 minutes in, my mapping unit started to flicker. Satellite bars vanished. The compass jittered back and forth like a broken scale. I banged it against my hip, tried a hard reboot, but the screen stayed dim. Faint gray streaks, like static underwater. The wind had dropped out. No birds. Just the sound of my boots in the wet. I decided to head back to the truck and file the partial report. I'd seen enough odd boundary details in my career to know when to defer to the office. Then, halfway down the trail, I stopped. There was another stake in the path. Same make, wood, gray, clay-topped. But this one hadn't been there earlier. It sat dead center in the trail, driven and firm. No sign of recent disturbance. I hadn't passed it on the way in. I was sure. The trail sloped enough that I should have seen it from 100 feet up. I stepped around it, kept going. The clearing opened a minute later. My truck, sitting at the edge. The driver's side door was shut, but something felt off. I always lock it. Always. Part habit, part protocol. But when I reached it, the latch gave with no resistance. On the driver's seat was a roll of flagging tape, not plastic, braided. It looked like cloth, pale, soft, hand-twisted like old muslin ribbon. I touched it, still damp, slightly warm. Then, from the bed of the truck, 3 soft knocks, deliberate, even-spaced. Then silence. I didn't open the bed. I didn't check the roll of cloth tape again. I just stepped back from the truck like it was a live wire and grabbed my pack from the passenger side. Not my full kit, just the essentials. Compass, canteen, backup flare, knife. I hauled it onto my shoulder and turned back toward the woods. Away from the road, away from that quiet, deliberate knock. I don't know why I didn't drive. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way the air felt suddenly denser, like the sky had lowered a few inches. I figured I'd camp overnight and hike out to cell range by morning. I'd been stuck in worse spots before, but after 15 minutes of bushwhacking through terrain I should have known. Something shifted. The stakes started appearing more frequently. Not mine. None of the flag points from earlier. These were wooden, vine-wrapped, bound at the top with strips of what looked like bark and hardened sap. Some angled toward each other like sight lines. Some formed in complete triangles between trees. Not enough to fully enclose a space, but enough to suggest one. Every time I stopped, I could hear the forest trying to hold still. I found a ridge cut with some old erosion damage and followed it down until I saw the broken outline of a hunter's blind. Maybe 10 feet up, barely hanging in a gnarled sycamore. Rotted slats, missing walls, but enough left to crawl inside. I climbed up, careful to avoid the soft spots, and sat with my back to what was once a sidewall. It was dead quiet now. No birds, no breeze. I pulled out my field notebook and tore out a few pages, trying to sketch the marker pattern I'd seen. Something about the angles bothered me. They weren't random. They pointed inward, like they were part of a larger shape I hadn't grasped yet. Then I saw it. Movement. Below. Someone, or something, walking slowly up the slope. Not crashing through the brush. Not stumbling. Following the flag line I'd set that morning. Whoever it was had no gear. No flashlight. No pack. Just a steady gait and a sense of certainty, like they knew the path before I'd ever walked it. I stayed low. When they reached the base of the blind, I knew I had seconds. I grabbed a rock from the platform, half a brick, maybe, and tossed it into the trees. Far off. Hard. It hit with a crack. The figure stopped. Then it turned sharply, without hesitation, and followed the sound. I waited, lungs burning, until the woods swallowed the footsteps. Then I slipped out the other side of the blind, dropped hard onto the slope, and kept low. I hugged root lines and fallen logs, moving slow and quiet, circling wide around where the figure had gone. It wasn't until I crested the next ridge that I looked back. Down in the clearing, barely visible through the branches, I saw them again. The figure, crouching where I'd just stood, placing another stake in the dirt, right at the base of the tree I'd hidden in. I made it out by cutting straight down the ravine wall. No trail, just instinct and gravity. I tore something in my knee halfway down but didn't stop until I saw the service road. Flagged down a truck and told the driver I'd fallen off a ridge during a site check. A week later, I went back with a rep from the state forestry office. They'd had a few odd claims from the area, unsubstantiated, just strange patterns. One report said, "We combed the grid. No signs of stakes, no cloth tape, nothing." But then the mail started coming, unmarked envelopes, no return addresses. Each one containing a photo, always of a wooden stake, always set somewhere I'd worked that week. The last one, it wasn't in a forest. It showed my front yard, just behind the porch rail. Scrawled in faint graphite under the image, "Incorrect boundary placement. Will adjust soon. Setting." Maps were the only thing that ever made sense to me. They held still. They made promises. I'm Aaron Talley, 36, a field researcher and part-time archivist for the Shenandoah Heritage Museum. For the past several weeks, I've been tracing old plat maps and township records, mostly for a cartography exhibit we had planned for spring. Dusty library basements, historical societies, estate sales. I'd been living out of my car and scanning everything I could find. Most of it was junk, but then I found the crate. It was in the attic of a long-abandoned farmhouse west of Waynesboro, the kind of place that barely has a mailbox. The woman who showed me in didn't own the house. She was handling an estate clearance and didn't ask questions. The crate was nailed shut, tucked beneath broken shelving. It smelled of mildew and soil. I flipped through dozens of maps, ink faded, corners rotted, paper torn, but one stopped me cold. Hand-drawn in red ink. No topography lines, no town names, just a narrow valley ringed by what looked like ridgelines. One dirt trail marked in dotted red. The paper was thick, almost like vellum, stiff with age. In the margin, in small tight script, someone had written, "Do not fold, do not photograph, follow before dark." This is a quide. That should have been enough to flag it for novelty alone. But the part that chilled me came later, when I stopped along a muddy pull-off to rest. Halfway up the mountainside, I unrolled the map again, laid it across the hood of my car, and realized something impossible. The spot I'd chosen to pull over, it was marked, not with a symbol or a road, just a note. "You are here. You have entu pact, no for man. We have been bacted by that the deity." And beneath it, in the same fine ink, "She is not far." Knowing, I scanned the slope ahead of me. Woods, scrub trees, patchy snow clinging to northern shadows. Nothing unusual. But then I looked back down at the map and saw that the ridges formed a valley that didn't match anything on my USGS overlays. The shape was wrong. Too clean, too symmetrical, like someone had etched it out by hand instead of nature. I took my field bag and followed the path drawn in red. The map wasn't long. The trail maybe a mile at most. The lines curved tight like switchbacks, then passed through a bottleneck between two ridges. Just past the tree line, I saw a locked gate I hadn't noticed from the road. The fence around it was bent low, easy to step over. I hesitated. Then I went. The path narrowed, grew steep. After 10 minutes of walking, I found a half-buried wooden sign, its paint peeled and blackened by weather. I brushed the surface with my glove and leaned close. Tally property, claimed 1,892. Dealer's accusation, when they're fray, not the pressening wudge. My name? I don't have family in Virginia, not that I know of. Not here. I grew up in Ohio, and both my parents were born west of the Mississippi. It felt like a trick, a coincidence, something to be explained later. But it made me keep going. Near the top of the ridge, the light dipped into gold, sinking low through skeletal trees. I crested the rise, and there it was. The valley, shaped exactly like the one on the map. Perfect oval, sunken like a spoon had pressed into the hills. Still, silent, not even wind. I pulled out my phone to take a picture. That's when the map slipped from under my arm and blew down the ridge. I scrambled after it and found it already folded, perfectly, sealed with red wax like a letter. And when I opened it again, my heart caught. A new line had been drawn, in the same red ink, leading up the ridge I'd just climbed. But this time, it showed a second figure on the trail, walking toward me from behind. I didn't wait to see if it was a trick. I turned downhill, cutting across slope, feet slipping in the thawed mulch. The sun was falling fast now, making the tree trunks look like columns of shadow. My breath caught in my throat more from instinct than exertion. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone crest the ridge. But the trail stayed empty, still, quiet, like the forest itself was holding back. I tried retracing my steps, but the woods weren't right. Landmarks I remembered were gone. No locked gate, no rusted sign. I should have come out near the fence by now, but the path kept bending, doubling back. My phone had no signal. The map, still in my hand, was heavier now, as if the ink itself carried weight. I stopped, crouched behind a stump, and unfolded it again. The valley was still there, but smaller now, not in scale, but in scope, like the paper had folded in on itself. The ridges had moved closer together. The trail lines warped into a spiral. I found the red dot that marked me, closer to the center now. A new line trailed behind, thin and jagged, and at the end of it was another symbol, a figure, again, just behind me. I started moving, not running, not yet, but steady, staying low. Then I heard the twigs crack. 2 breaks, perfectly spaced, someone walking with care. I held my breath, pressed flat to the forest floor. Nothing moved in my line of sight, but the footsteps followed, always just out of view, always in rhythm with mine. I crested another rise and saw the stone wall. It was low, crumbling, the kind used to mark early settlement boundaries, stacked without mortar, now half swallowed by moss. I ducked behind it, heart racing, and opened the map again. I pulled my lighter from my jacket pocket, flicked the flame. I pressed it to the edge of the paper. The flame licked the corner, then died. No smoke, no char. The paper wouldn't burn, but the red ink started to move, bleeding outward, curling like veins across the sheet. A new message formed in slow, arcing letters. One must stay. One must leave. Choose. He's sane. The footsteps were faster now, closing. I had seconds, maybe less. I tore the map in half. The rip wasn't clean. The paper fought me, but I managed to split it. One half showed me, kneeling by the wall, the red dot perfectly still. The other half showed the path, and the figure, still walking, getting closer. I made my choice. I pinned the half with my location under a loose stone at the wall's base. Then I bolted. Branches whipped my arms. Roots tore at my boots. I didn't look back. But just before the sound stopped, I heard it. A scream. Not of pain. Not quite. More like something being pulled away. Stretched thin until it snapped. Then silence. I don't remember finding the road. Or losing my shoes. I flagged down a logging truck sometime the next day. Told them I was a hiker who'd gotten turned around in the fog. They gave me water and called the sheriff. I didn't say much else. Back home, I mailed the torn half of the map to the museum. No return address. 2 weeks later, one of the staffers, a temp named Naomi I barely knew, went missing during a weekend hike near Humpback Rocks. I tried not to think about it, tried to believe she'd gone off trail. But then, last Friday, I found an envelope in the museum's drop box. No stamp, no name. Inside, the map. Whole again. And this time, my name was written in red ink along the ridge trail. Not as a dot, but as a destination